Welcome to Best Friends in Franchising. I'm Morgan Knoller.
And I'm Catherine Allen.
If you're interested in franchising, exploring opportunities, or diversifying your portfolio, you're in the right place. We talk myths, money, mindset, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Today we have someone very special, Cindy Taylor. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good. Cindy is a powerhouse in the franchise coaching world and also our business success coach with soccer stars. But you didn't start there. You started with Jump Bunch. So can you kind of dive into what did that look like and how did your journey to being a business success coach?
Well, thanks so much. I wouldn't say powerhouse, but I appreciate the compliment. You know, when I first started my franchise, it was in 2003. So life in franchising and being an entrepreneur has so morphed into so many things since 2003. But I was the first franchisee to buy in. I was unit number one for Jump Bunch, which was sports and fitness for kids. And it was mostly a preschool program. I had a big corporate job for 15 years before that. I was the director of sales for Clear Channel Communications for their 8 radio stations in Houston and LA. So I had a big corporate job and had a, 3-year-old and was like, yeah, done. Don't want to be a corporate anymore. So I came in and said, I think I want to do this and I want to work from home and I want to be my own boss. So I, honestly, at that point, I Googled, kid related, franchise businesses, came up with Jump Bunch and met the owner of the franchise system and, got in for a song because I was, it was like with the first one. So that's kind of how it got started in being an entrepreneur and being in franchising. I really didn't know that much about the difference between owning a regular business and owning a franchise. So I had and I really didn't know anybody else that had done it. So like you guys are best friends and sort of had each other to explore together. I was like solo artist, I think I'll just try it. But I mean, I love being a franchise owner. Loved it. It was a great 20 years.
One story I remember you told me when we were in the car because you came out when I was launching my business to do sales calls because, when you're a new franchise owner, it's a learning curve and it's scary to get out there and sell a business for the first time. And, I wasn't totally confident in how to sell it. And you're such a great salesperson, woman. But I remember you telling me with your business, you're like, Catherine, I was a single mom. Like I had to make this work. I had to make money. And like, I think that was a big, right? Kind of boost. Like you're like, I had to get out and sell. I mean, obviously you came from sales, but just having, for me, I felt like I had to replace my corporate salary as quickly as possible because we had bills to pay and, contribute to my family's finances in a significant way, right? So just kind of that, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can. I was exactly what you said. I was a single mom. I needed to replace my income as well. And I just, in general, am like, I mean, you guys know me, but like, I'm a type A personality. Like, I'm not going to do it if I'm not going to do it well. And that's just sort of who I am as a person. I wanted to be successful, giving up a big corporate job. I had my own ego to deal with too. Like I was like, I don't want to go from this big corporate job with all this great responsibility to a flop. So I had money motivating me and just the ego and drive to do something well, make it successful. I was motivated, I would say, absolutely by money, but I would be lying if I didn't say that wanting to be successful and have that, I had a little bit of ego drive there. I'm just being honest, right? Like I had that because I wanted to do well. It meant a lot to me to do that. And that's one of the things about, any sort of entrepreneur, especially with franchising, just want to make sure that you've got a great product. If you've got the great product and you don't have to develop your own product, just so much more is available to you. That's what I love about franchising is I didn't have to come up with a curriculum. I didn't have to come up with a product or the service and figure out like, oh my gosh, like how is this going to work? It was something already proven. And that's what I needed because I was like, I don't have time to do both. Right. And so that's sort of how I came to really wanting to do a franchise instead of like really starting my own thing from scratch. I didn't know how to do that. I've been in sales that I knew how to do. So, yeah. And it was when I first started, there was no real franchise support, right? I was the number one unit. So all I had was literally a logo and, I had a resource list of where to buy equipment. That was it. there was no website, there was no nothing. So it was just like me out there, like, printing out trifold brochures on my little laser printer, taking them out. So it was a learning curve, just because I didn't have a whole lot of support. And I think nowadays, from 2003 until 2025, there's been so much time and so much more support that franchise systems can give, franchise owners, which is why I came back to be, after I sold mine, I came back to be a coach, because I was like, oh my God, you guys don't know how great you have it. Let me just like help you get going, because what is available to franchise owners now in any industry is so much more support and resources than early franchise owners, like from 20 years ago when I did it. So I mean, there's just so many great ways to be successful now.
Right.
That's I was gonna say that's so true. We don't realize how lucky we have it, and I think when we, as consultants, are now talking to our clients, we're trying to explain that to them, that it's silly not to look at a franchise this day and age, because there's so much built in that I think I think that's a misconception, that people don't realize how much support there is versus when you started, Cindy. And there was something that you talked about with multiple of your people that you work with, especially in Soccer Stars and the YAU system. You always talk about the race to replace where you aren't wanting to spend your time. And I think that's probably why you were so successful for those 2 decades. Can you talk a little bit about replacing yourself and what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to make sure that you delegate as much as you can as a franchise owner. For me, like, sometimes people come in, and I'll just talk specifically about youth sports right now, but it really could be for any industry. But for like youth sports, a lot of franchise owners come in, like, for example, let's just say it's soccer, because they love soccer. I just want to teach soccer. I just want to teach soccer to kids. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, but that is really, really tough to own, operate, and be the administrator for your hobby, right? Because when you really want to do is you want to get out there and teach kids. That's what I love the most. That's great, but you can't have any kids to teach unless you get on the sales trail and get out there and procure customers. Being out there and just replacing yourself in the field, right? Making sure that you are, and that's, kind of what I did. And that was like a lesson that I think that I sort of learned a little bit later than I wanted to. Like, one of the things, like, if I could go back and do it again, I probably would have replaced myself in the field a lot sooner. So those first 3 years, I mean, I was teaching so many classes and trying to get customers and being a single mom by myself and, upset when my nanny couldn't make it, and just like all of the lifestyle things that came around it. And then once I finally was like, you know what, you kind of think to yourself, well, I'm the only one that can do it this way. Right. I'm the one, I know it better. I love it more than anybody does. None of my coaches can do it as well as me. And they can, they just do it maybe a little bit different. And so once I sort of came around to that way of thinking, that say they don't do it exactly like me, but they do it great in their own way. And I just had to like take that leap of faith and trust my staff to be out there teaching the kids the way that I have trained them and taught them to do, so that I could go and run my business. And once I really came to that, after like the third year, my business just took off, because I wasn't trying to juggle teaching class, doing the training, and and training staff, and going to trying to get new schools, whether it was school districts or individual preschools or working with Girl Scouts or all the millions of ways that you can make money. I kind of, for myself, realized that that's what I was good at, and that's how my business is going to be successful. If I can just get out there and do what I'm good at, and I'm just going to hire a bunch of college kids to come out, young people, to teach the classes, because they're so relatable to the young kids. I was like the mom figure. I had I had two young kids. Like, they wanted like a 19-year-old college student, you know what I mean, who was playing soccer for their university. Like, that's way more relatable than me. And when I realized that, it just became a lot more successful once I
I
was
love
able to do
that you
that.
just shared that, because what was your number one priority when you did my strategic plan? Remember, for
Get off the field.
6 months in, and you're like, Catherine, your number one priority, because I was coaching 13 classes a week. I was doing everything that you just described, because I
Yeah.
also had two young kids, and sales and marketing and recruiting and train. It's too much. And as soon as I got off the field, I skyrocketed my revenue. So you're absolutely right. And, I always say you need to be working on the business, not in the business. And you really got to think about it. And I think it's hard. I came from franchising. I was in it for 13 years. So I knew that from that past previous life. But I think for people who didn't have that like constantly in their head, who've come from corporate America sometimes and not working with business owners like I did pretty much, my entire career, it is kind of a shift of because you do think, well, no one can do it as good as me. And so I like your kind of mindset of it's not as good, it's just they do it differently. And you got to
They do it
train
differently.
and you have to observe and ensure that quality is there. But yeah, so a question I have for you in your role as a success coach with,
Yeah.
hundreds of owners across our system, what is the number one challenge that comes up when you're working with these owners? Like, is there a is there a top one or are there a few? Like, what comes up for people the most, would you say?
Say so. I mean, I've been working with brand new owners, as you guys both know. When when you first get started, those first 6 months. Also working with owners, have been doing it for 2.5, 3 years. Like Morgan and I, every week are still talking. And I would say the number one challenge at the beginning, right, is sort of the time expectation. People, especially when they come into a franchise system, and they'll be like, well, isn't the system going to do everything? Of course, I know I not trying to contradict myself, because the system will give you a lot of resources, right? They have so much support, but it really is your job as an owner to go and get your own customers, right? Like, they're going to help you manage the customers. They're going to give you a CRM. They're going to give you, all the marketing materials, but you have to go and sell and get your own customers. So I think that's one challenge for new owners. They're like, well, how do I do it? Even though we give them a plan, this is how you do it. Most people, I don't want to say everyone, most people are not prepared for the amount of cold calling that you have to do to go and get customers. So I think that's one challenge, which sort of also is in the same vein. They're sort of intertwined, which is their biggest challenges. They really do not understand the competition in their territory. So,
Mm.
for example, if they maybe say, "Oh yeah, well, I know that there are soccer shots here." And you know what? Yeah, for soccer stars, that's a big competitor, but they just don't realize how ingrained and how long soccer shots has been successful. And you may think, yeah, but there's so many schools, there's got to be room for us there in the preschool world. And in reality, in some territories, yes, there are, and in some territories around the U.S., there's just not. You just have to go in a whole nother direction because they're so ingrained. They've been there. So some franchise new owners come in and they really haven't done the homework on the competition. I'm just using soccer shots as an example, but
Sure.
if you're, there's, if in Houston, for example, and you were coming in to do TGA, which is the tennis and golf franchise, you have to do your research that they've got another franchise. There's another, golf business called Little Birdies that is in like every school district, right? So, I mean, maybe they knew that, maybe they didn't. Unless you're in the public school system, you would know. So I think those are the two biggest challenges, is really they have a hard time really grasping the amount of really legwork and in the field sales training, and just not quite up to snuff on what's going on with the competition in their territory.
I think
And
that's
really, so go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was
Sorry.
gonna say that's definitely my challenge. I remember that's exactly what we ran into our first day of sales. Cindy, you and I went out and went, oh my gosh, there's competition everywhere, and didn't understand. But I think what people listening need to know is just because there's competition, that means there's demand. So I think you're right. You just have to pivot and find a different way to make money. And now going into year three, essentially going into year three, I feel that I'm pushing some of that competition out, or I'm finding different ways to be almost like a more elite type of company. So I'm trying to just work on the quality as much as possible so that when I do get those people, I can convert them very quickly on showing how we're a more superior brand. And I think that, yeah, I think it's just so important to know that the demand's there. You just have to know how to find your niche and what works for you and your company. And I think that's what, Cindy, you excel so well with the franchise owners and finding new ways to make money. And I think for us, it's definitely not just preschools. It's definitely not after school. It's like everything. I think for our
Everything.
company, we've had to go find business every single different way that's been offered to us.
That's
And
right.
of
It's
course,
just, I was just going to say, it is that. And that's like helps you understand your competition and get new business, is the more you go out and you're focused on what your potential customer needs, customer focused selling. you will ask all the right kinds of questions to find out where the gaps are so that you can fill the gaps with it, whether it's an open location, a public location, a closed location, elementary schools, school district, private schools, preschools, daycare centers, open enrollment, soccer clubs, like any of those. You're talking to any wide variety of customers. Number one, you're learning about your competition, right? You're learning about your competition because you're asking all the questions about your opportunity, and there's some sort of gaps there. And if you can't find a gap there, at least you've learned about maybe what your competition is doing. So you take that information and maybe, like Morgan said, pivot or learn or adjust what you're doing to resell it to somebody else. Repackage it up, resell it, someone's going to buy it. And if you're really focused on what a customer might need, whether it's a parent, a school director, a school district, what the kids are enjoying or not enjoying, what do they get bored with, what programs and what curriculums are working and not working. If you're listening to every one of those different types of customers, you're just going to get better and better at selling and better at identifying the competition's weakness so that you can go in, because you're right, there is demand, but some of them aren't doing that great. Some of them, whether it doesn't matter what industry you're in, not everyone is bringing their A game. So if you are considering bringing your A game every single time, the competition is going to be, less of a detriment. You're going to be able to go around it because you're going to be able to improve what you're doing on a regular basis. So.
Yep. And I think that is, what makes you a great owner, Morgan, because you're relentless. You ask the
Yes.
questions, you listen, you think strategically and creatively and problem solve and repackage. Cindy, you're a fantastic success coach. AU Youth Athletes United Soccer Stars, they're a great franchise or who has great success coaches like Cindy. Like, this is all the things that make a great system in franchising, and what you want to look for is having that support like a Cindy who can help a Morgan and a me with these things, because I didn't come in with sales experience per se. It was marketing. You didn't really either. You
I would say
like
there was more sales in the
more
past.
sales than me, but this was a totally new industry for us. So it's the learning curve of that whole landscape, I guess you could say. I think, but then look at us now, right? We're very successful franchise owners because there are the systems, there are the playbooks, the tools, the Cindy's to
Yeah.
help. But we've been really relentless. We think creatively. We're problem solvers. We can pivot. We're adaptable. We're nimble. Like, there's been a lot that we've had to do. I can't go into La Marinda with after school programming because there's a competitor there who has a really big stronghold. But now I'm going to go in the spring with a rec league and try to come head to head with LMYA and take them down now.
But yeah, I mean, just because that's right, because you found there might be a gap somewhere.
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
little gap. That's right. You got to find the little gaps. I just kind of want to go back one second what you were mentioning about Morgan and as a business success coach, I just want to just sort of mention this, that what I do with all the new owners is talk about like their sort of goals, because as we said before, like my goal is very motivated by money. I had a big ego and I wanted to do really well. And I remember when I first met Morgan and she was like, I don't have any sales experience, but she was an interior designer. And I was like, how do you get your customers? She goes, oh, a lot of it was word of mouth. I'm like, because you were actually out there selling your services and your talent. And how we had this conversation where she didn't really see herself that much as an actual salesperson. I was like, you're literally a salesperson. Look at all this experience you've had. And that's sort of, and I try to do that with all of the franchisee owners that come in to try well, I've never owned my own business before. Well, especially like moms, if you are a mom and you have been running your household, by the way, you're a business manager, right? Like, I'm just like, that's what you are. If you've been managing your household, then you are a
Right.
business manager, and probably way more efficient with financial planning, scheduling, and figuring out how to get stuff done on a regular basis, way more than some guy who used to work in a corporate job. So I just really try to help all my franchisees see that no matter what experiences they've come into the system with before they came into whatever franchise system they're in, that experience is all going to be relevant, because as a franchise owner, you're doing a little bit of everything, hopefully not teaching your classes, or like you had said, working on the business, not working in the business. But at the beginning, you do have to do a little bit of
Yeah.
it. Just the most everyone coming in to be a business owner has got some relevant experience that they can apply to their success as an owner, 100%. So
I
I just
really
wanted to
want to
mention
lean
that.
in. I really want to lean in because it is Women in Small Business Month,
Right.
October, right? We're
Yeah.
bringing in all the powerful powerhouse women. But what you said about moms, because this keeps coming up, right, Morgan? This keeps coming up. It's come up in every conversation we've had this month on our podcast of moms, women being able. We juggle so much. We juggle so much at home with the kids' schedules, with our work. But like women make such great franchise owners. Don't you agree, Cindy? Like, talk to us about that. Why do you think women make such great franchise owners?
Well, we're better at everything. I mean, you're laughing, but it's like we are,
I'm laughing because it's true.
because it's true. We're better. We're better at everything. I would say women, for the most part, are more strategic thinkers. And honestly, in when you are dealing with customers, staff members, admin, having a little emotion, right? More emotion is, I think, a better thing than not having any at all, because you're in human to human contact. Think about the two of you, who your customers, the school directors that you work with that are, by the way, probably making way less than you, the parents who are struggling to come up with their $80 a month so they can play soccer because their kids love it. And think about your staff member, these young, 18 to 25-year-old kids that are just trying to pay their cell phone bill, right? And so you're just trying, those are, interpersonal communication skills that I just think women are better at in general. And those kind of relationships and conversations are like the core of your business being successful. How do you communicate with your staff? How to communicate with the different sets of customers? And I feel that's just, just women are just better at that in general. Now, that's a general statement. And if there are any men watching this, sorry, but we're just better at it. And even though, like I said, I have a little bit of an ego too, but for the most part, like, we will hatch it down and do the dirty work if we have to. We're going to do the grunt work instead of saying, oh my God, I need an assistant to take care of this, right? We don't need that. We are our own assistants. We're our own associates. I just feel that women are a little bit more well-rounded, willing to get into the weeds of things a little bit more sometimes. And a lot of times, even though if your husband happens to be the breadwinner at home, or your partner or whoever else is in your family might be the main breadwinner, I mean, who's to say that you can't go out there and try to be that too? Make yourself equal by bringing in more money. Not a competition, but so that the whole family can be lifted up. And I feel like that's something that, good marriages and good support, I just think it's important for any sort of success, whether you're in franchising or a corporate job. But I don't know. I just think women are better at it for those reasons I mentioned.
I can't
So
totally disagree with that. I agree. But I will say, aside from being women that are better at all this, I do think when you become a parent too, because like a lot of our employees are not parents yet. I mean, I think all mine, they're single or very young, like you said. So sometimes I think part of being a good franchise owner is if you have been a parent, you now understand that there's no days off. It's 24/7. And
yeah,
I don't know that you, I mean, some of these young franchise owners just have the drive and they're going to do great. But if you become a parent first, I just feel like you have more drive because you understand there are no days off. You have officially crossed that bridge. You're not going back. So you have to wake up every day. You have to work in the business, and you've already been doing it because you wake up at 6 a.m. If your kids are up, you're up, right? Every single weekend. It's like,
yeah,
regardless, no sick days. There's no, my allergies are bothering me. I'm not going to show up to work today, or car broke down, I'm not going to make it. For the parents, we're just like, you realize that that's not, there's no more excuses. You have to
yeah.
show up, or get out. And so I think if you become a parent before being a franchise owner, you're in a good spot because you know that you have to wake up every day, but there's no days off.
That's such a great. I love that more because it's like David's like soccer stars is your third baby, and it's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
I mean, I think both are true, where yes, you have all this experience as a mom and you know that you don't take any days off. But I think women in general, even if you haven't had children, right, that just sort of drive for equality and success is there as a female, like is in female psyche. I think, just I'm not trying to get to into the psychology weeds, but I think that yes, I agree with both of you guys as being a mom and how helpful that is, but just in general being a woman and really seeking out that equality to be equally as successful as any other franchise owner that's a male. And it's usually an uphill battle. I mean, think about you guys. We were all at the conference, our YAU conference in December. Do you think there were more men than women there?
No.
I
There
think it
are
was maybe
owners in YAU.
equal.
As I felt like a lot of the new franchise owners felt like it was very 50-50. I felt like if it was someone that had been in the system for a while, it was mostly males. And as you got it up the corporate ladder, it was still mostly males.
Yeah. There's only one female in all of YAU, one female in leadership. There's only one.
Just
Oh
saying.
man.
So
Just saying.
talking about
Okay,
being
go ahead. Continue.
successful and resilient, you built Jump Bunch for 2 decades, and then you had this amazing exit. And I think that's something that Catherine and I are really trying to focus on when we talk to clients, because going into the franchise world, it feels very permanent. It feels like you're locked in for life. I mean, it feels very serious to some of these new
Yeah.
people that are just looking at franchising for the first time. Can you talk a little bit about your exit and what did that look like? And was that the end goal always, or did it just kind of evolve and eventually you said, hey, I think I can exit and get out?
Yeah, the end goal was always an exit. I never want to do anything forever. I have way too many other, interests in my life. So I actually ended up relaunching my business 4 times, right? Because so I had two huge weather events in Texas that where all the schools closed, some of them never reopened, similar to the pandemic, closed for weeks and weeks, months, and then never reopened, had to start over. Then the pandemic happened as well. So like four different relaunches. And each time I was getting ready to relaunch it, I was like, maybe it's time to sell. I just don't know if I can start from zero again. And then in towards the fourth quarter of 2021, I was like, I think it's kind of time. I feel like I've reached the reach. I could do more with it, but I don't really want to, right? It was just sort of like, wasn't that the business couldn't go anywhere else. It definitely could have, but I had taken it as far as I was willing to take it because the next jump was going to be expensive and it was just going to take so much more time. And I mean, honestly, I was over 50 and was just like, I don't know if I want to do that again. But we were also coming off the pandemic. So I had that goal. I needed a year to try to get my revenues up because, we had so many schools that didn't come back after the pandemic. And it took many, many months to get all of our franchise, to get all of my customers like back up to our parent pay programs to get, parents re-signed up. So I had a goal that I was going to work on long-term contracts so that when I sold it, I would have contracts in place worth buying. So that was my goal. And it was like a whole different strategic plan when I was exiting so that I could build it up to a place that it was, that it was sellable, that I could get what I wanted from it. And that's what I did. It took me like 10 months. And I ended up selling it to a customer.
That's right.
One of my school directors who had been having us at their school for like 12 years. I was sitting at her desk one day, I don't know, talking about anything. And I'm like, hey, do you know any like young moms that might be interested in being a franchise owner? Because I'm trying to sell Jump Bunch, maybe a parent of one of the kids that are in our class. And she goes, I think I might want to do it. And I was like, okay, and this was somebody I had known for years. She had been, been a director. We were good friends. Our kids went to school together. I knew her really well from the community. And, we sort of went through the process and, sort of that's how I ended up exiting. But it was a planned exit. It was planned. It wasn't like, my life is, poo and I want to get out of this business that's going horribly. It wasn't like that. It was, I need to get out because it's time for me to do something else with my time. But it was, it was a tough exit in the fact that, man, it was really bittersweet. I mean, 20 years is a long time. And I think the average franchise is like 10 years. And so I stayed in it probably longer than I should have, but it was hard for me to let it go. It was a business that had given me everything I wanted for my lifestyle. It was a lifestyle choice. I work from home. Most of my business was school year business. during the 9 months. I had some summer business, like the last couple of years, I had did a summer camp, but I had many years where I did not bring in one dime over the summer by my choice, but I still had a great annual income because I just consolidated everything in the 9 months. And I did it because that's the lifestyle I wanted when I was raising my kids. And that was my choice. And so when I was getting ready to sell it, I was like, okay, so here's my mini strategic plan for the next 10 months to get it sold. It was planned. It was planned, but it was still hard to say goodbye, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you bring up, Cindy, about the fact that it was bittersweet. It was a decision that you made, because we do get questions sometimes about resales and why is this person exiting and what went wrong. And it's not usually something that went wrong. It's just a lifestyle choice, or you've grown it to the extent that you want to and you're ready to exit.
Right. Yeah. And it's just sometimes you just want to do something else.
Yeah.
So you just want to do something else. Doesn't mean that anything went wrong or there was anything sour about it, because there wasn't. The business is still going strong, and somebody else owns it. They're still doing well. It was just sometimes just ready to do something else. And when you're a franchise owner, you have to pay royalty fees, and all 20 years I had to pay those royalty fees. Even when I really wasn't getting as much support those first few years, right? It was really just paying that because of the logo, what and the curriculum. And then so after a while, that's why I think franchise businesses go for about 10 years. People get tired of paying the royalty fees. But I mean, I don't know. That wasn't my reason for leaving. My reason, if that was really the reason, I wouldn't have stayed as long as I did. You always have to pay royalty fees, but it's, I think exiting after 8, 10, 12 years, easy to do, and not necessarily, you don't have to leave with a bad taste in your mouth out of it. Just do the best you can as long as you feel like doing it.
Well, the beauty of everything that you said and shared is that it was all on your own terms.
Yeah, it was.
You designed your lifestyle. The business was designed towards your lifestyle. You had the summers with your girls, which was
Yeah.
wonderful. You exited on your own terms. Like, that's the beauty of franchise ownership. And I have one final question for you
Okay.
before we
Okay.
end.
Okay.
Everyone listening on this call who's a franchise owner, Cindy, what is one shift that they could make this week that would have the biggest impact on their success? What is one shift that they can make this week, in your wise words?
Be committed to making at least 10 sales calls every single week in person.
Whew,
I
tall order.
What?
Because we're like, okay, we'll get out there.
But this is that new information from hearing from me, guys? Yeah, you got to go out there and make sales calls. And
Even though we don't want to hear that, it is very wise words. So everyone out there, make those 10 sales calls. It'll grow your business. You can thank Cindy later.
yes, but you guys can do it. And you guys, even though you don't, people are like, oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But honestly, when you do it and you close business, don't you feel better?
Yes.
Don't you feel like you're growing your business? Don't you feel
Yes.
like, oh my God, I accomplished something. This is the way it's supposed to work. Customers want what we have to offer. And it makes you feel good.
Builds
Makes
the
you feel good.
confidence. It's all the things. It's the dopamine hit. It's everything.
It is. It is. It's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you everyone for tuning in to listen to another episode of Best Friends in Franchising. Cindy, Taylor, thank you so much for joining
You're
us
welcome.
today. Absolute pleasure as always. And for those of you who want any more information about franchising and business ownership, go to thefranchiseinsiders.com and you can contact Morgan and myself.